Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for this week's ICE commentary on the Russell 2000 and the US equity markets. It's Nick McDonald here. Let's have a look at the Russell chart first of all. We're going to have a look at a couple of the cash indices as well. So we were bullish last week looking for a good run up, and I thought we'd get up towards 700. And I didn't think we'd get too much resistance there. Temporarily, as we got up there, we rejected them. We got up there again, it failed, and I started to think, well, I might be wrong on that. It started to look like it was finding some resistance. But on Friday here, we got up and we managed to close above it. We closed up at 710. So it's looking pretty good for getting through 700. And in all honesty, my analysis hasn't really changed. So my view was if we can get up through there and get that bullish weekend, and this was the bullish week on the, let's look at the weekly candle, because we wanted to break up through the high of that week and then push on through 700. And after that, there's nothing really stopping us till 770. And I really think that the markets are heading that way, news aside. So unless any major news comes out that pushes these markets down, that's the way that they're heading. I think we'll get there. Now, we may not get there in a straight line. So any market is going to pull back, and this daily chart, of course, has got potential to pull back. I just don't think it's going to pull back soon. I still think it'll push on a little bit in the early part of this week before probably pulling back and then pushing back up again. I think we'll get back up towards 770. It's particularly bullish on the monthly chart now. Failed to break that low, really bullish monthly candle. If we can hold that, especially, and we're still a little bit away from going into next month, but if we can hold a bullish candle and next month break up through the high, then we'll have a confirmed higher low, and it will be looking very bullish to actually come on up in the coming months and break up to new highs. Let's have a quick look at some of the other markets. Dow is very similar to the Russell actually, but I want to look at the S&P because the S&P, just an ever so slight hint of rejection here with some resistance. We rejected back here, rejected here, and come up and rejected again now. So I just want to see the S&P push up through that level. I don't think it'll have any huge amount of trouble, but certainly there is some resistance, and I want to see the S&P get through it. Then the S&P is probably a little bit closer than the Russell to its next level, but up around here, around about 1255 once it gets through 1220. So still got a decent run on that. The one that still happens to be the most bullish and by far the leader of the market is the Nasdaq. Now if we just look at it here again, just beautiful pullback, 50% rejected, came down, tried again, rejected, same level again, almost on the nose. We're now coming right back up. We're right back up near these highs here. Now let's just have a little look and put this into some perspective. Actually, I want to zoom out because I think we're going to break up through those highs. There's a bit of resistance. Their price has been tested on multiple occasions, but I think we'll get through it. Now this is also, if we just zoom right out here, these are highs. If we can break up through that level, we're back at levels we haven't seen since early 2001. That means we're about to hit a 10-year high. That's a decade-long high on the Nasdaq if we can just get up through that level. Now that is the kind of news which I think will make headlines, and it's the kind of news which I think will get the market quite bullish again, because there's so much negative press out there. We're hearing all this bad stuff about stocks, and I think most people, if they're not, they're looking at charts day in, day out, like you and me probably are, but a lot of people aren't. A lot of people who are buying stocks and who are the investors that keep the US market propped up are not necessarily looking at charts every day and don't necessarily know what the Nasdaq looks like. And I think a lot of those people, when they read headlines saying Nasdaq at decade highs, decade-long highs, I think that's going to give some real buoy to the markets. I think we should see even more of a rally on some of the other indices to come and play catch up, because they've got a lot further to go to do anything remotely close to decade-long highs, or even to come back up and break just their recent highs from 2011. So I think that the Nasdaq is undoubtedly leading the way here, and if it can get up through there, it is the kind of news which should make headlines, at least in a few places. It's going to be very good for the market. And it's likely to give the Russell, which usually is one of its closest partners out of these four major indices, it's likely to give the Russell a good boost as well. So coming back and looking at the Russell, next stop for the Russell, I think is 770. There'll be pullbacks along the way. We need to watch this closely and see what happens. Need to see if we run into any resistance on the way at places like this, where we have got some old touches in not too recent times. In recent times. So we'll go a little bit in the way, but ultimately this is the major level, 770. That's where I think price will get to. It's a bullish market now. We need to, as always though, in a situation like this where there's a lot of fear in the market, we need to be very, very aware of the news. I've said that each week, but it's a very news-driven market right now. And there's been some good news out this week, some not so bad news as well as what's come out this week. We need to be just watching, because any hint of really bad news again, any hint of major fear coming back into the markets, and things can change quite quickly. But for now, my view hasn't changed from last week. I think we're going up. I think the Russell's going up towards 770, and I think we're going there in the coming weeks, maybe months, but I think we could get there reasonably quickly, like say 2 to 3 weeks. There we go, everybody. Happy trading. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to speaking to you on next week's update.